Hi there. It is the Lean Into Artcast, a show where a couple of visual storytellers, engage with visual storytelling topics about how to make things, why we make things, how we think about things, what's the lifestyle of the creative storyteller, visual storyteller. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd, cartoonist and teaching artist. The other host is...
Hey, I am Rob Stenzinger, a UX and game designer, facilitator, stuff like that. How's it going, Jerzy?
Happy anniversary, Rob.
Oh, yes, happy anniversary to you too. Thanks. It's
That little groan you did at the beginning was so good. Yes, that's what I should have said.
That is what I should have said.
It is not a competition. But yeah, hey, look at us. Has it really been 200 times we've done this thing?
No, it hasn't. It's been 200 for this particular thing, but we've made like over 300 Lean Into Art podcasts. It's just that we sort of split this one. This one partway along its life became a main show and a second show where it's like this is the formal one and then the informal one, right? So we had Lean Into Art and then we had Extra Lean. And there's over 100 extra leans. So, but I don't know. I think it's pretty awesome that here we are at 200 on one particular effort.
Well, way to suck the magic out of it, Rob.
I did. Let me explain away.
Way to Neil deGrasse Tyson this podcast.
Yeah. I did.
But yeah, you're right. 200 of a single thing, of an entity. 200 editions of that, and 200 check-ins, 200 show-ups of that thing, of that entity. That's kind of cool. And so you came up with a pretty interesting idea on what to do for a 200th episode, given that it's a milestone, right?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of is any kind of project where you do something, you put it into the world, and on some kind of basis do reflection and look back and do some kind of retrospective. So I thought, we could talk about, well, okay, what have we done? What is this about? And well, that's something interesting. But then, well, what if we also did this exercise of like, let's use this time as a little bit of a retrospective and talk about how that can be of benefit to any project, especially collaborations, but not limited to that. Pretty useful for solo effort too. And we can just live that out right here.
So not a clip show, but more like modeling the exercise of reflecting on and evaluating where the project is, where it's going, how you're different, what pieces go into it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, roughly exactly that. Roughly exactly that. It depends on what you want to get out of it, right? I mean, it's just and that's where, well, okay, just getting into doing some retrospective stuff. I mean, this is really in line with something that comes up thematically for us, which is reflection and having some kind of ability to look back upon what you've made so far and reconnect with it and see how that affects you. Is it a useful feedback loop, and do you gain new appreciation for what you've done or learned or adapted or changed along the way? Totally that, but a little bit of the whole. Now that we've done this reflection exercise, let's see, like, how do we describe this thing? Like, and is it like what we started, and what does that mean?
And do we even have the same definition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as a team.
That is so awesome. That's one of the reasons you do this, is you find out everyone's perspectives and like, how do they relate? That's, can at the very least, if people are seeing things differently on a project, you have a chance to like honor that different perspective and find the common ground, fresh, anew, and with intention. So yeah, I mean, it probably is not surprising that I would look at a method that leaves things that could be unsaid, said and explored instead. But I think, I'm not alone in that. And there's a lot of useful, other useful resources on the topic too.
Absolutely. And this is something that I know personally with my solo projects, I don't do enough. I don't do enough of this kind of. I mean, I do a lot of data collecting, and I do like a weekly like review, but I don't do a project overhead review, um, and find out if if my motivation is still the same.
Hmm.
And if my initial assumptions that led me to the thing are even fully tested and thought through, or if it's just like something that I assumed in a moment of emotion early on. Well, that's the thing I got to do, and I'm just going to do that, and then follow that star for 4 years and find out what happens, right? 6 years.
So yeah, or six. Uh, that's exactly. This is the kind of thinking that we're dancing around, and we plan to dance all the way through it.
All right. So speaking of dancing, maybe I should play some up-tempo music to bridge us over to the first section of the show, where we talk about on-the-ground topics, engaging with the topic, like the doing part of this particular topic, actual reflection exercise, and then maybe we'll back away and look at what we actually did, right?
Yeah, going on the ground, so to speak, with our boots on.
Yeah.
Yep. Hang a lampshade. When in doubt, hang a lampshade. Project review team retrospective. So, like, okay, you set aside a time and a place to look back at a thing, and when you do it once, I think it can give a project some kind of like, oh, okay, I've got a little extra meaning and context, maybe closure. It's like if you can at least do it once, but then if you're a part of an ongoing thing, why not do it on a recurring basis where now you can sort of track like what different people shared and like what did we do about that? Because it's super easy to sort of just go back to business as usual. And so here we are. This is something that I would say that we do this, but like I couldn't tell you on the recurring basis of as far as when. We do this at least every 200 podcasts.
I would say that it's habitual for us, and I think it's ingrained in us to be doing this in some, even if it's like little nudges, little check-ins. But I do have to wonder if, and I don't know if this is too 10,000 feet up, like I do have to wonder if like scheduling it on a regular basis would be a good idea.
I think it is. I think with some projects, like working on software, where you have, or perhaps maybe on a webcomic, you would have chapters, or if you're releasing something in small increments, you can choose like, do you want to do this at every time you put a thing into the world, or like every so many times you put a thing into the world, or is it related to the volume of stuff, whatever it is, like you can put a threshold together and say, this is when we're going to make sure we do this.
Mm-hmm. So how do you do it? I mean, like what's the procedure?
So just to, set us up here, it's important that, so this is a safe place, Jerzy, right? There's no like terrible answers or wrong perspectives or whatever. Like what this is about, getting more of our ideas out without filter and whatnot, where, we want to build off of each other's work. And so let's say if you're saying something that I want to like morph or do something with, obviously, by the way, I'm in a modeling exercise. Okay, saying a couple of different phrases are super handy for group dynamic when you're doing feedback. Yes, and is super cliche, and it's the whole from the improv world. And if I honestly recommend everyone go try an improv class. They're freaking fun.
Have you done it?
I have a couple times. Yes.
Have you told me about this and I just forgot?
Probably. It's been like 6 years, man. 200 episodes. It's just,
Wow. I've considered doing this, and some of my friends have done it recently. And yeah, it sounds absolutely terrifying, which also makes me say, well, man, that means you kind of have to do it now.
I, exactly. Does it sound interesting and scary? Yep. It's worth probably exploring that. Especially if it's a learning thing,
Yeah.
like a workshop. So
But yes,
yeah,
the yes and is like everybody knows that now.
this is
Yeah.
widespread. Yeah.
Yep.
Where you're building off of others' ideas. You want to honor their idea, and just keep that this gathering a safe place to continue to share. Because of the opposite of that is feeling judged shuts people down. Feeling at risk. It's like you don't want that. Like that ruins the value of doing this kind of effort. So another really handy thing as far as when you are giving feedback and it's not the yes and where you're building. Let's say you want to shape or adjust or emphasize or vote on stuff, and you're giving feedback. You can say things like, okay, you got two pieces of feedback, and you can use I like to start or I wish to start, and so I like that. You know we discussed how my audio was rough on different episodes, off and on, inconsistently, whatever. For instance, I made that up because, but it has been. But I can say I like that, and then I wish that I wish we set aside more time to plan technique stuff for the show, right? So you can see how like maybe if you have negative feedback, to maintain the safe place or whatever, saying I like can prevent positive pile-on stuff, but also saying I wish can prevent negative pile-on stuff.
You're also focusing on the positive outcome that you want instead of damning the negative outcome that you didn't want, right? I wish, instead of saying, like, for instance, I wish Rob would stop having such crappy audio, right?
Yeah, I mean that's there are ways to hack the system where I wish Rob would have stop having such crappy audio. It does sound a little bit better than saying stop having such crappy audio,
Right.
as a
But
command.
still,
It does
but
sound a
like,
little bit better.
it sound the example you used made it sound to me like you're also saying I wish, as in I wish for this positive outcome, not I wish for the absence of a negative outcome.
Yeah, totally. And that can come with practice. I mean, if that's what comes out naturally, maybe read your feedback before you give it. Catch that stuff, if you can. Otherwise, that probably will come out in the group, and you'll get feedback on your feedback. And let's see. There's there's another technique that can be really handy too. Let's say there's something that you really want to, okay, we want to gather what's gone well in our reflection, and we want to think about what, so there's a category of what has gone well. Then what would we like to improve? That's another category. And then also there's this above and beyond, what do we want to really celebrate? There's a few things that have happened that we maybe haven't held on to enough or appreciated enough, and then emphasizing them here this is a nice chance to catch that instead of letting it go. So you got 3 buckets, and instead of everyone saying one thing at a time, and raise your hand, and then one person, whatever, you get group dynamic stuff going on there where, oh yeah, that's what I was going to say, and whatnot, to really get something out of people's brains that are gathered in a group. You don't have to succumb to the group think, survey panel stuff where you're all in one room or whatever. You could all write your feedback down and do it in parallel. So you could say, all right, everyone, we're going to take 2 minutes and we're going to write down and say what has gone well. Next, we'll do 2 minutes and write down, whatever. And as the 2 minutes are up, literally time it, make it, give it a little bit of pressure so people have a deadline, and then see what comes of that, and do that for every bucket, and then do some grouping and theming to say oh, I see in general we've got some production planning issues on our project, or
I participated in a thing. Sally Carson led an event at the Ann Arbor District Library years ago where we did exactly this, and we did it on Post-it notes. And then she had us put all the Post-it notes on a table, and then she went through and like walked us through the grouping, where it's like, okay, well, this word is coming up a lot. This idea is coming up a lot. Where can we group this? What would we group it under, right? So it's like it's a physical grouping, and because it was on Post-it notes, it was kind of anonymous, which also lifted the pressure off.
That's true too. That's a really handy. Um, it, it's a handy way to see a collective voice form, and instead of like really spotlighting and having, or even having like even if it's helpful, having one personality dominate, because the point is to get the whole intelligence of everyone involved. So okay. And then that's it. Then you can sort of discuss. Then it makes sense to discuss as a group, and you may get weird group dynamics, or you can do another individual, like everyone do it in parallel exercise of like, well, what did we learn, right? And then you could do the same kind of share out. Like now that we've grouped and themed, and okay, what does this mean? What do we want to do next, and all that. Whatever you think is important for your retrospective. But the idea is. Make it safe to reflect, do some reflection, try not to step on each other when you reflect, and then try to gain some insight from the gathering of all that reflection. So there you go. Are you ready?
Oh, now we have to do that? Ah, you son of a gun.
Let's do a mini one.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a mini one, because it'll be like, we don't have like elevator music prepared, do we?
No, I don't think I do. Oh, you mean to play while we write stuff down?
Because you can play elevator music while we're writing. Yeah. Not necessary.
Oh, I should have thought of that. I've got a whole bunch of little tiny stingers for like our music bridges, but nothing that lasts more than a minute.
I like the music stingers, and I wish you had elevator music.
All right. Captured that. Because that actually probably would come in useful for future shows. Elevator music.
Yeah.
All
right. So what if we did... Oh, let's see. I want to do something that's not boring to listen to. Right?
All right.
But yet but genuinely do this. So what if we compress this down to like 10 seconds each category?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So like, what if we started with, all right, so now take 10 seconds and write down some things that you think have gone well with our project. The first 200 episodes of Lean Into Art. Forgot to say that was the topic. So you ready? Set. Go.
All right. Everybody at home can be doing this too.
I think we're totally past time now.
All right. Actually, and I do want to say, like, I would be fascinated to hear what the leaners think on these topics too.
Oh,
People
totally.
who've been around for 200 episodes. What would they say?
Yeah, I mean, from a member of our community. If you're like a recurring, constant member, we like to think of you as leaners. Leaners are learners, and leaners aren't wieners. All that stuff. So.
Okay. So I got a few things. Do you?
Yeah, I do. I've got a few.
Okay.
Cool. So you want to go first?
Well, I mean, the big one that I think is an obvious and easy one is the ease with which we navigate the topics. I feel like in the 4 years, there was a lot of awkward us getting to know each other sort of in the beginnings and learning each other's styles, and also trying to challenge ourselves to take on really difficult and complex and abstract topics. And I feel like now we could probably sit down with just about any topic and figure out a Lean Into Arty angle. Of course, that's going to naturally sort of bubble up is a style, an approach, and a way of thinking about it. And then related to that is developing more interesting and complex and abstract kinds of topics to discuss. Like a conversation we often have when we're developing ideas for the show is we'll say to each other, "That's a very lean into arty thing." Like we
Mm.
know its characteristics without having to verbally describe them. There's like a sort of a pictorial image in our heads now of what that is, and I feel like we both kind of notice it in the same way.
That's awesome. I wholeheartedly echo every one of your things that have gone well. I think it's been great, and pretty huge accomplishment how consistent we've been with this and constant. That's led to some incredible practice, and I let's see. I think how we collaborate has gone really well, and like how we've developed and grown and evolved this project because it has morphed over the years. Um, and then of course how we interact and we've changed. We uncovering interesting commonalities. Like one bullet point I wrote down was friendship. We started as friendly collaborators who have a sense of professionalism. Then now we're friends. So
Yeah. Yeah, I have called you to talk about my problems. That's like the threshold. That's the line in the sand. Where it's like, well, I guess we're friends now.
yes, I suppose. Yeah, for me as well. And yeah, to sustain that kind of thing, it's I like. I don't know what it says. There's probably a whole deeper topic there of like, if I make things for a long time with someone, does that mean they have to be my friend? I don't know.
Yeah.
But but it turns out to be true in this case. So and I feel it's like for me it's been a lot of skill building for this particular space that I personally feel grateful and great benefit from, because this practicing doing this with you has made me better at a bunch of different things.
And I can underline that as well. I mean, my teaching has benefited immensely from this weekly practice. My ability to navigate just casual discussions with regular people has benefited as a result of this. So I have a clear reminder in my head to ask interesting questions as often as possible, right? So,
Mm.
but okay, so I wish. Here comes the I wish. Um, Having listened to a lot of shows like the You Are Not So Smart podcast, and really shows where there's like a really well developed topic where it's not necessarily somebody wondering over it, but somebody really kind of like hitting hard with like they did research and here's a presentation of their knowledge as of this time. Maybe
Mhm.
the other voices come into it. Now I'm not saying that I wish Leaving Tart could be that, but it does make me wish that I took the time to broaden my knowledge base and reading and research so that when we do take on these topics, I have a little bit more to come at it with than wondering based on my X amount of years of experience doing,
Mm.
right? I wish I had
Mm.
comparative analysis to add to the discussion sometimes.
Um, so that's cool. Like so the cool part is this is the next phase of our reflection would be exactly this. This is essentially the I wish stuff where it's like what would you like to improve, right?
Mhm.
So then we could do that 10-second thing or whatever, or we could just
Oh,
time is of the essence where maybe we just think of a couple things off the cuff. Which would you like to? Which
well, I
approach
just
would you
named one
like
of
to do?
mine. So do you want to
Yeah.
just? I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to like knock the
Oh
wheels
no,
off the thing,
no,
but
no. Yes, and all the way. So hence like we could just do a couple of those things and keep
okay.
on rolling because
Uh,
inherently we're modeling like a little version of this. This is probably like you would want to get together with your collaborators or yourself. You want to set aside like a whole hour where you're doing this, or maybe an hour and a half. It depends.
mhm.
Um, but then definitely to make the most of everyone's time, have that have it nicely structured out. But okay, so what would you like to improve? Should we do a few seconds on that, or should I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
think of one off the? Okay,
All right.
all right, we're gonna do that. Okay,
Yeah, let's time
okay.
it for 10 seconds.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay.
Did we do 10 seconds? It was roughly that.
Okay.
I think we're slightly over, but yeah.
So what do you got?
Okay. I put down 4 bullet points because it's hard to write a lot of stuff in 10 seconds. So, I would like to achieve, a stronger revenue stream with our efforts. So funding, which would also help with potentially a bigger team, right? And changing the model of how it's done. And maybe there's a couple of roles to help with production or something. Because that's one way the podcasts you describe are they're incredibly wonderfully polished efforts that are distillations of larger pools of knowledge and participants, that when it's performed and cut together, even then there's likely a higher volume. Let's say like what you end up hearing, there's, I would guess, probably at most 80% of that was there's like a 20% stuff on the cutting room floor factor, right? If not more.
If not more, yeah.
If not way more.
Right.
So like that's the time to do that extreme and anyway, super cool results though. So yeah, bigger team, more production, and also new kinds of product. I would like to do more experiments beyond the podcast, which we've been chipping away at, but
Right.
yeah, there you go.
Again, echo 100%. That's exactly what I wrote down. I wrote down product development and dollar signs. When in doubt, just go to the symbols. But then also, I wish I could find ways to spend more time. I wrote follow up with leaners, right? Like spend more time interacting with the community. Right now, it's mostly limited to comments on Twitter from people who I know listen to the show. But
so super fun. Like this hits home super hard because literally randomly within this last week, I came across an email from a leaner from like December 2015. That was a holiday card.
oh,
So kind, and it totally fell off my radar very quickly due to holidays, and that was an interesting day job time of phase and what have you. But like yeah, it fell off my radar, and I was like, I need to follow up on this, and I'm debating if I'm just saying it on the show, but so I'm just gonna say it. Miriam, if I'm pronouncing your name correct, or incorrect, I apologize. Thanks for the awesome holiday card at the end of 2015.
did I miss it too? That's like a long time ago now.
I
Oh
don't know,
dear.
man. But like it's so yeah, right. More time to interact. I mean, it's I go when we get the feedback and reactions in like we mentioned the extra lean posts, right? I go yeah, and then I'm like, when am I going to talk to like, oh no, I want to think this through and
Oh yeah, that's
some time.
totally what I fall into. I almost zealously overthink my responses to the point where I don't respond, and I need to. I got to figure out something to do about that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
have
hard.
a clear answer on that just yet, but I know it's a shortcoming, or it's something that I want to improve a lot.
Yeah, duly noted, and right there with you. What any other I wishes?
Oh, I only had 10 seconds, buddy.
I
Let's see.
I don't know.
I mentioned, yeah, I'd like it if that I want to organize my time so that I have more time to interact with the leaners, do more product development and think more about revenue stream, and then also do sort of the tertiary research that feeds into potential lean into art topics. I want to read more. I want to consume more information to help broaden my perspective and come at this thing with new approaches.
Okay. This is awesome so far. Would you feel ready to do a quick celebration,
Okay.
or do you want to like take 10 seconds to write at least one thing to
It's celebrating.
celebrate? Like,
What do you mean?
this is the it's almost like there's a potential for echo chamber between the what's going well and the celebrate, right? A lot of times it's, sometimes it's shaking that tree one more time to see if something new falls out, or it's digging deeper. So however it strikes you right now is right. And let's do 10 seconds on that.
Okay.
All right. Starting in 2 seconds, one now. Okay, I write 2 long sentences. Okay. Here we are.
All right.
All right. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Hooray for stick-to-itiveness. We're still here.
Right on. Yes. That's and well, it's cool to hear that that's a celebration thing. It's a project that's been around this long with, I mean, honestly, this isn't like something that like a group of folks got together to make a band and they never really thought about it. They just kind of, well, I don't know, making music, whatever. That's our thing as we think about it, right? So inherently this project has had so much scrutiny thrown at it over 6 years. It says something that it's still around. Excuse me for being corny here, man, but your skill and friendship makes me a better person. So I want to celebrate that.
Oh, that's kind of you to say. My skill and friendship make you a better person.
Mm-hmm.
What an awesome thing to hear.
Yeah, I mean it. All right. So,
well, I had friendship and making friends on my list as well, but it was by no means that elegant. Also, practicing what one preaches to show up again and again, and not only do the practice of the thinking, but the practice of the doing, performing, researching, investigating, and bringing that back to the performance and the teaching, and doing that without fail for so long, I think is commendable.
mm-hmm.
Great for us.
Totally. And like that ongoing effort has been like putting in the time to work on a thing has like a variety of like direct and indirect benefits, and some of them accumulate over time. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. And so pretty sure that we'll be going on to 201 podcasts.
Yeah.
After all this, but so what, that was the exercise. That's the thing. That's a retrospective, a mini one. And even when we tried to compress it sort of spilled out a little bit, but hey, we're doing our examination thing and
right.
Exploring. So what do you think about,
yeah, you ready to go on to the next section?
Yeah, like taking a look at some like more of the why.
Yeah.
I don't have a great teaser.
This is a bit of a mellow episode 200. No arugas, no call-ins, no confetti falling out of the ceiling, but just like two guys very patiently and carefully scrutinizing the thing that they make. And in the next section, we'll talk about like, well, some of the reasoning behind this kind of thinking. Is this just a bunch of senseless back padding, or are there other gains to be made from doing this kinds of checking in on a thing? And what kind of benefits have we seen out of it? But before we do that, we need to thank some people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Yes, patreon.com/lean into art. What is it? It's your way to give us a monthly thumbs up, a vote for us. If you believe in us and if you believe in the work that we do, if you've been consuming the show, listening to the show, participating with the show for the last 200 episodes, you can let us know how much it means to you by giving us a vote on Patreon. And what's a vote? You can pledge as little as $1 a month. And the more people do that, the more the show becomes sustainable. That's that revenue stream thing we were talking about earlier. And I want to take this opportunity to thank 5 people who have been doing just that, who have been voting for us. First is Jamie Gamble. You can find Jamie on Twitter at Jamie Gamble, comic book writer. Writes a whole bunch of comics. You can find them all on his Twitter feed. Owen Jolins, old friend of the show, been on the show before, professional comic book colorist, who you can find on Twitter at Comic Colorist. 2 C's in the middle there. The word comic, the word colorist. Also, Mark Falk. Mark Falk can be found on Twitter at Radimere, Radimere. Thank you, Mark, for your support. And India, fabulous cartoonist and animator, who can be found on Twitter at Old Swifty. And thank you, India. And finally, Casey Snipes, you can find on Twitter at letter K, letter C, Snipes. Thanks to everybody who has been supporting us on Patreon. And if you decide to check it out, it's at patreon.com/leanintoart, where you can find all the shows that we produce, plus the extra leans, the show that we do just for the patrons. And we'll be posting one later tonight, where you can find it at patreon.com/leanintoart.
That is wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
Here we go. So you pose the question, is this just back padding, or are there other gains? Is there
I feel like there's a threat of back padding and a threat of hair shirt wearing, right?
Does that have a certain theme song?
Hair shirts?
I don't know.
Well, I think that was an REM song, actually. But, like self-flagellation, self-punishment, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. It's Well, okay. This kind of I guess why are you doing the thing that you're doing? And if honestly, if that's what you're into, I don't know. That it sounds like that's working for your project and the people on it. Yeah, I tend to take any sort of plausible excuse to do some reflection as enough. So I'm like, let's do that, and with the intent to say there's probably things that are going well, but there's probably things that can be improved. Because it could be just Dunning-Kruger Fight Club.
Yeah, it could be. No, and I get what you're saying, because like I just did an audio commentary for Shadowwing Tronics' BW Media Spotlight investigation of Seduction of the Innocent, and Troy wanted me to weigh in on like why I think comics are good for you, like why I think that they help you as a reader based on my experience as a teacher. And I prefaced it by saying, like, there's part of me who wants to stop making the case, the vitamin case, like the why it's good for you, because it's just self-evident. They're just awesome, and that's enough. I shouldn't have to sit here and go like, and you're gonna have a healthy complexion, and you're gonna stand up more straight, and people are gonna like you more.
It's tough. I mean, so with so practices like this, or I guess, or any project, why would you need to begin it with a defense of it? Because you believe in it is enough. If there are individuals or groups that are, let's see. This, I mean, it's squishy territory, because obviously if in all your best estimation, what you're doing is of some benefit to you in the world, and at least neutral to people who aren't into it, then why would you have to defend it?
Right.
Because I guess at this, I mean, I don't know. Like, there are audiences that, I mean, could you even reach them if you need to defend this? You know, the challenge of you know, how do you get past the bubble or something when that's a willful thing.
Mhm.
And
However, there
yeah.
also is a value to pointing out to alerting young travelers to the benefits that are hidden at the outset, right? Um,
Sure, that sounds super helpful actually.
so,
Hmm.
so where do you want to go with this section?
So yeah, back padding or other gains. Um, I think it's interesting the kind of folks that have shown up to this place, right? The sort of um, and it's kind of like there's different, seems to be different groups of folks interested in lean into art, right? Where you could do it, you could categorize based on, you know, primary creative or public facing disciplines that they put out into the world when they make stuff. But then there's also there's seems to be folks where um, it's more meta, where it's like, well, I just like hearing how you think about stuff, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, so I mean, what are some groups that you've kind of heard or noticed or seen that have shown up to?
Um, well, I mean, like it's not just developers and cartoonists. Crafters,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, sculptors have interacted with us in the past. Um, People who are the I mean the overarching category would be some kind of creative pursuit. But I've noticed that to my great happiness is that it's not limited to exactly what we do as creatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
I bang the comics drum a lot, but that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that I'm interested in and only want other people to be interested in. It's just my favorite, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, hearing from people who make music, who are like, "Oh, I like what you guys do and how you think about stuff." It's like, "Wow, really? That's awesome." I'm glad that what we're doing in the way our approach is approachable by a variety of disciplines. That we're speaking to it in such a way that it resonates, regardless of what kind of creative pursuit you have.
Right. Well, and it's also like the reason where whatever pursuit you have that brings you here, it's also like the almost the why, like, well, what's the job of this podcast when folks come to, come to, invited in to their world, right? It seems to sometimes be the uh the it could be based on our tone, right? We're kind of like creative company who have a tone that's less, I don't know, we're not too harsh, right?
Right, right.
Or yeah, but it, or it could be the style of exploration of the just coming up with interesting questions, and that's somehow stimulating and worth having on in the background or foreground. But and I guess, I mean, it's just kind of fun to hear that kind of thing, and take note that you know we notice when people share and comment and react, and um, that and it almost helps us know like what this is,
Yeah.
like from another angle.
Oh man, so much of what I do in the classroom depends on what I see the kids doing, right? Watching them
Mm.
react to what I'm presenting is a signal to me of whether, because it can go anywhere. A classroom experience can go in any direction, and um, I feel one of the things I really enjoy about where I am right now as a presenter and teacher and facilitator is I'm not picky about where it goes because I feel like it can go in any place, and I feel like there's interesting stuff to be found in any place that it goes. So if my class agenda gets hijacked by the kids' interest, it's almost more interesting, or actually often it is more interesting. But going through that life cycle over and over and over again helps me understand what my classroom is. right? Like what my classroom experience is and what services I have to offer. So that's instant feedback. That's like live feedback. But getting, it's harder with a podcast. But yeah, getting that feedback is huge triangulation. And one of the things I have heard from multiple data points from leaners is the word gentle comes up a lot.
That's, yeah, I suppose even if we don't agree with a thing, we probably, I mean, it's pretty rare if there's a like an absolutist forceful manner with it, because the things that we don't agree with, we can probably coexist with.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. I mean, it's funny. Like statements like this uh, mean something different to me now when I say it than they did, like let's say before last November, right?
Yeah.
Because because obviously there are lots of things that you can't coexist with, and you need to fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That
hope
was
that the fight is sustainable and people find peace along the way, right? But like in all of us, right? So fighting matters, but so it's not like we can coexist with everything, right? And
right.
it's all like, hey, everything, like, oh, let's blow over other stuff that's happening. But then I think you can have a sort of you could choose to engage with every one of our topics, probably with a lot more table flipping, and
Yeah. Yeah, you
yeah,
could. And when I think back to my early days in the art and story days, I know I did that every once in a while. As I know I said some things that, like, when I look back now, I was like, "Whew, boy, you thought you had it figured out, young man." Good for you. Good for you for showing up.
that's funny too. But okay, wow, let's see. I think of things once in a while where that we've been fascinated with stuff that turns out to be, maybe misused. Like the biggest one I remember is the in what was that? There's a website that they're like one of the highly accomplished creators of clickbait headlines, right? Remember we had this conversation with Ryan Estrada. Glad we got to
Yeah.
mention him on episode 200. But
There, now we can wrap the show up.
cycle is complete.
Yeah, what was it, BuzzFeed that we were talking about?
No, it's not BuzzFeed. It was like it was typically something that was pro-social. This is surprisingly good and beneficial, but their method of creating headlines was they wrote like 25 headlines before they picked one or something like that.
Right.
And anyway, there was some good things, interesting techniques that come out of that. Like I use that when I want to write a sort of a title for something or a talk description, right? I mean, it's well, I mean, I'm pulling something useful from that. That is, I don't know. We podcasted about something looking at like clickbait headlines in a way, and we're like, oh, that's fascinating, but yeah,
Yeah.
it turns out that can get misused.
Yeah. I remember Ryan actually did a test of it. I think at the end of that episode, you proposed a comic about some mummies who open a restaurant. I think that's what it was like. It was mummies who open up a fast food restaurant in Egypt or something like that. And Ryan did the 25 headlines or the 25 titles, and the last one he came up with was food pyramid. And I was like, oh, that's so good.
That's pretty good. Yes. So a good technique. I don't know. I'm just doing a little bit of off the cuff reflection there, but
Yeah.
thinking about what we're striving to be and our style and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Almost trying to find the counterpoint for like, well, I mean, I enjoy like our style and I appreciate our voice and how it is growing and evolving, but like I end up just in how I'll have a sudden aha, like that one. Looking back, I'm like, oh boy, we kind of endorsed clickbait headlines, didn't we? Oops.
I, okay, I'm going to not necessarily. I'll push back. That's the phrase the kids are using, right? I'm going to push back on that just a
Mm-hmm.
touch by saying I am certain that if you go back and listen to it, it's us saying, "Isn't that fascinating?" Not, "This is clearly what we need to be using on everything." Right?
I
Let's walk around it and examine it from a bunch of different angles, like scientists, and not make a value judgment on it. That's different than endorsing it.
Good point. Good point. That's my. I suppose that's my. Maybe I get fearful that I endorse things that are not useful or just beneficial over the long run from time to time, and that's more fear talking. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another one that I want to get better about in the future too. Is that I know that a lot of my well, we talked about this earlier, our hesitation to respond to things, at least for me, is there's a very strong, fearful voice that says, "Have you thought this through enough? Have you thought this through enough before saying something about it?" I don't. I'm so afraid of giving a hot take, you know. uh,
Mm. Yeah.
and I know that, like, if you really probably boil it down, Rob and Jersey's hot takes are going to be lukewarm at best. They're going to be very measured and careful and hedged and yeah.
In almost all, but we are also human, and we there's a few topics that we'll have giant feelings about as well.
Sure.
But like in the vast universe, yeah, pretty measured, and that's uh, that's not going to stop.
No, no, I feel like that's another discovery we made along the way in the last 200 times together. Is there? I remember there was also a period where you and I were kind of like really fighting that and saying like, no, we need to be more vulnerable and open and direct and speak from the cuff because that's how people feel like that you're being authentic. Big joke. The moment you say that, you're not really being you're being very inauthentic when you're like, how do I be authentic? But
I suppose that's that you just completed the the books in the saga of are we authentic enough publicly or whatever, right? Where
yeah,
we were conflating the idea that someone who can gush in a certain way that makes you cringe, maybe because it might be going into like gory detail, TMI, who knows.
uh-huh.
But like, gosh, that feels genuine. Oh boy, aren't they being genuine and vulnerable? But like honestly, this is me being vulnerable. This is me like
Yeah,
sharing my thoughts and expressing them in a we have intention and things we want to explore, but we are exploring it as we're exploring it.
right.
And then yeah, I mean, so when did you ever get an aha on that one where it was
I
like
remember I was talking to you. This was maybe a year and a half ago. I was talking with you after we recorded a show, and there was something. Don't ask me what episode it was. I have no idea what episode it was, but there was something in the show where we started to hit on topics that I had a lot of strong feelings about, and I felt the urge to go into it, and then I backed off and said, maybe this isn't the time. And upon reflection with you, I said, is like this exasperated sort of thing. I said, restraint's pretty awesome. Because I felt like we had a better product that we shipped because it wasn't burdened with my ranting. Because the moment I thought about it for 3 seconds, I'm like, I haven't thought about this enough. I can come back to this, but I want to give it my full attention for a while so that when I do talk about it, that passion will be there, but also a lot of reason will be there as well. I don't want to just foam at the mouth about anything. I don't. It's not a good place for me to be, and I don't think it necessarily helps anybody. Maybe it's entertaining, and maybe even cathartic, but that's not what I'm here for.
and I think that's the thing is that some people can perform and do that some kind of constructive flow of here you go, this is an entertaining thing, it's a podcast, it's a blog post, it's a comic or whatever, and they can do it while having that rawness as their avenue, and that's all right. That's a skill that I guess I'm not that worried about. I think I'm raw when I need to be, but
Right. Yeah, and there certainly are times for that.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think here? Do we need to do one more break and come up with a final thought?
Okay, yeah, let's do a break and we'll have a final thought where maybe we can talk a little bit about gratitude
Mm-hmm.
and some maybe some things we want to think about doing in the future. Um, Not necessarily like here's a sneak peek at what's coming up with Lead into Art, but more like hey, here's things that words that have crossed our radar. What do we think about these words?
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that, we have to thank some other people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be us. We make stuff. We, like I said earlier about practicing what one preaches. Yeah, we make stuff, and then we talk about the stuff that we make. And I make a comic. I make actually a number of comics, but this is the one I want you to pay attention to today, if you have the time, and that's Boulder and Fleet at boulderandfleet.com. What is it? It's a all ages, well, kids and kids at heart story about two best friends who want to be adventurers for hire. One of them is a very ambitious bird who wants, to be the most famous adventurer of all time, and her partner happens to be a very, very powerful bear who has a great aversion to fighting. What? We're adventurers for hire. Doesn't that mean we're going to fight things? Well, it means you're going to encounter great dangers. And how do you navigate those great dangers if you don't want to hurt anybody? That's what the comic is about. You can read about it at boulderandfleet.com. Also, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/Jerzy, and I've been posting a lot of in-process stuff for the print editions for the last couple books that I finished on the website. But yeah, Rob, you make a game.
Yeah, I do. It's called This Panda Needs You, and it's all about uh, just having a mellow time solving like simple to complex puzzles. These puzzles happen to be all about like basic gravity and physics when you stack blocks of different shapes and patterns. So what happens is you're in this nice little bamboo forest and a panda comes along, sees a pattern of blocks stacked up already, and then a cloud comes along and whoosh knocks them all down. And it's really your job to help this panda put those blocks back to where they were with the same kind of color and shape relationships. And that's pretty easy early on, but then as you get on up to up to the higher levels, there are more than 50 levels, it gets more challenging. So uh, it's right now available for iPhone and iPad, working on releasing this on other platforms. So that's in progress, but you can learn more about it at this-panda.com.
And if you do purchase it, or if you have purchased it, and if you haven't yet, giving the game a rating in the iTunes store, the iTunes App Store, would be hugely supportive of the game because it helps more people find it, raises its rankings in search. Well, let's suppose that you don't care about games, you don't care about comics, and you know what? It's okay. Although you're missing out on something great, not just our stuff, but games and comics. But if that's not your thing, but if you're really here because you like the way we process information and ideas and explore ideas, then we've got more stuff like that at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download at a price of your choosing, even a price of $0 if you want, video workshops by me and Rob. I've got comics workshops there. Rob's got UI workshops, making video games workshops, and even one about turning jokes into comics. And that's at leanintoart.com/workshops. And if you've already done that, if you interacted with all of our stuff, you've downloaded the videos, you've given Rob's game, this Panda Needs You, a 5-star rating in the iTunes App Store. A great thing you could do right now, if you're watching the video on YouTube, giving it a thumbs up, that helps raise our rankings in search. Or if you're listening to the podcast, or even do both of these things, go to the podcatcher of your choice and give the show a 5-star rating. That helps more people find the show. More people find the show. More people can support us, and that makes the whole thing much more sustainable. And after all, if you love something, don't you want to tell the world about the stuff that you love? That's how I am about it anyway. I go around talking about comics to just about anybody. They're great. So anyway, thanks to everybody who has been doing just that. It means a lot to us.
It does. Thank you.
All right.
So
I
I heard a little bit of what next and a little bit of gratitude.
A little bit of what next and gratitude. So, yeah, would you want to close with gratitude and start with what's next?
Yes.
Okay, what are you thinking about what's next?
Okay, so in the spirit of that's a big topic as far as like, let's think about all these possibilities. And
2 minutes, go.
Okay, I'm just going to keep it really short.
All right.
I would like to change our sort of just the branding. I want to
Yep.
go from being the single leaning dude to like people, right? People leaning into art. So
Agreed. That is long overdue. I like that guy, but I
so do
wish
I.
there were more kinds of people on there.
Hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean exactly. But the guy will always be around on whenever we find the time and make that change. It it's not like we're going to retcon and go back to every episode and change the guy. So
Change the album art on 200 YouTube videos.
yeah, nope.
Oh, that would be a toughie.
Mm.
But yeah, that's something that's in drastic need of updating, and I mean that is something that is going to change. What about things that might change?
Oh, uh, I think we might end up changing. Like I don't know. Like I debate as far as the production style with YouTube versus other venues,
Hmm.
and does it make sense to do YouTube first because it sort of controls some aspects of like the quality of what you're recording and it's pretty good, right? But like maybe yeah. So that's more of a maybe and might that we've poked at, but not
Yes,
not
we
not
have.
since
We
we've needed to. We needed to make a change once upon a time, and then we did that change, and here we are, right?
but we have. Yeah, you're right. We haven't needed to since then.
And honestly, we made that change somewhat early on.
Yeah, we did. It
Yeah.
was within probably the first year, I want to say.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
So, what about rebroadcasting?
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, I think about this too. I think about so another podcast I do, Art and Science Punks. We're currently, we decided to go seasonal, and there is something about that I I love because it allows for some investment time and shuffling and juggling and stuff where like the gauntlet of the continuous deadline, yeah, it's cool. It has lots of strengths, but there are other models, and and of course we have experimented with going to every other week and all that. What if we maintained weekly and then mined our vast 200 episode catalog and did like a little rebroadcast preface thing? Like how would you picture that, or what do you think about rebroadcast?
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting experiment to do, both to free up bandwidth for us to explore some of the other stuff that we've intended on making products,
Mm-hmm.
um, but also to uh, sort of curate sort of like a best of collection out of the archives. Because yeah, 200 episodes. There's a lot. I don't know how everybody engages with our stuff, but I don't expect everybody's going back and re-listening to episodes on a regular basis. Um,
I think it's pretty rare. I
yeah,
think I think it's occasional, and even rarer will we hear about it. But I know we've heard about that at least once.
yeah. Um, and I know that some of my favorite podcasts have done this a lot, and I have never been angry for it. Worst case scenario, it's like, oh, didn't really care for that one, and I shut it off and I move on to something else. But
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, I'm like, oh, I remember this one. I don't remember where they got to at the end of this one. So from
Mm-hmm.
my own personal experience, it seems like it would. There's very little friction in the way of that. Again, this would be something where it's like getting some extra feedback from the leaners would be super super interesting. But yeah, 200 episodes plus. I mean, even pulling out some old extra leans, right?
There are some extra leans that are so lean into art.
Yeah.
They're and that it's funny. It was the evolution of extra. There's been a back and forth where how we've worked on extra lean has influenced the main podcast,
Yeah.
and it was interesting, different constraints and stuff. But yeah, that that would make a lot of sense too.
So, final thought. How do we express gratitude? I mean, is there a metaphor to explain like visually what it means to check in every week and sort of show up not knowing if everything's going to work out okay, having a fairly high comfort level with it, but having very little in the way of prior knowledge that it's going to be well received, right?
Mm.
It's one thing to show up and be like, oh, I'm going to hang out with my friend for an hour. Very little risk involved in that. But not knowing for sure if it's meaningful to anybody but you and that friend, right? And when you get that meaning, right? Trying to think, like, you're sitting in a cafe, right? And you're just drawing in your sketchbook. That's not even a good metaphor. I'm just trying to think of like what it means to have somebody that you've never had an interaction with tell you that. Well, sort of like what you said to me earlier when you said like, like I'm a better person because of, your skill and your friendship. Wow, right?
Yeah.
Having somebody come up to you or email you or message you to say something about like, even if it's not like a direct compliment, but this thing you make has meaning. I'm engaging with it. I'm giving you a signal that this thing has meaning. This thing makes me think. That's really profound and powerful.
It's that. I mean, that's the I, everyone listening to this, like we're not alone. We share some kind of common ground and common interest. Having that reflected back at us, and that the things that we make and the things that those who listen to this make. Anytime someone is saying like this matters, it's a very positively reinforcing, validating thing, and that's I mean why we do this is to make a connection, and that's and getting some kind of closing the loop, like that's where it's obvious the connection has happened, because you can guess that it's happened, but then those interactions when people say what they say, and they have ideas about what you made or what have you, and there's some kind of like thanks for doing that. It's wonderful, and so it's great. We've received a lot of that throughout the years, where I'm just incredibly grateful. It's one of the reasons that I, in addition to the practice in your friendship, is why I do this.
Yeah, same here. Few things make me happier than when somebody comes up and says, "Oh, that thing that you guys were talking about, like this, it really got me thinking. And so, what about this?" Like, here, there's it's not just a feedback loop of high five. It's a feedback loop of let's keep the thinking going, let's keep the consideration going.
Exactly. Yeah. That's our flavor of the high five.
That is. That is totally my high five. Oh, nothing makes me happier than when I find out somebody's like really been crunching hard on an idea.
There you go. I think that's a pretty darn fitting final thought.
All right. Cool. Well, Rob, thank you for checking with me all these years and doing this thing over and over again. And here's to many more.
Thank you, Jerzy.
And thanks to everybody who's been downloading, watching, and listening all these years. It means a lot to us. It really does. If we haven't made that point clear already, it really does mean a lot. So this show will be archived at patreon.com/leanintoart, at leanintoart.com. A lot more social media stuff coming up in a second when you hear the closing music. And we'll be back next week, Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy on Twitter.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user Lean Into Art, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm going to shut off the stream. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. Thank you for the kind words.